In the last couple of weeks, we have focused extensively on improving your skills to make you a consistently fast sim racer. Today, we're finally gonna look at how to race other people without making a fool of yourself. As always, this episode is broken down into different parts, so feel free to jump to the part that is relevant to your knowledge or watch the whole thing and get a refresher on the basics. This is the Sim Racing Guide, and today, everything you need to know about racing etiquette. The first safety mechanic you will learn about when you go to a karting track or any other racing venue for that matter is the use of flags. Oh, and I guess also the use of traffic lights or LED panels. Green means that the session is going on, red means that the track is closed and you should go back to the pits ASAP. In sim racing though, flags aren't always that important. If anything, the game that puts most emphasis on flag rules are the F1 games by Codemasters, which isn't even really a sim racing game. Also, flags are rather easy to understand. Here is a handy graph with all of the important flags and their signification. The meaning of flags should be the same across all gaming platforms, but sometimes the actions that need to be taken when a certain flag is shown can be quite different from one game to the other. Blue flags, for example, indicate a faster car approaching. In F1 and other sprint race series, backmarkers are expected to let lapping cars through. That means slowing down themselves and making room for the faster drivers. Meanwhile, in endurance, there is no such thing. Backmarkers are simply asked to keep their lines and have a predictable movement through the corners. It is the lapping car's responsibility to find a safe way to get by. But that doesn't mean you can't help them and yourself by letting them by on the straights though. Yellow flags indicate that an incident happened somewhere on track. In real life, you'd always have to slow down to a safe speed, but in racing sims, you often won't be penalized for running full speed in a section where an incident happened. However, while you might not get a time penalty, if you have no time to slow down for a misplaced car on track, you might have to pay for that in the form of damage to your vehicle. So make sure to watch out for blind corners and hilltops. In most cases, those two flags should be the most important ones in any racing series you wish to run. But make sure to always inform yourself about specific rules in the series you want to enter. The next easiest thing to understand about racing rules are track limits. A track exists because of its combination of straights and corners. But now imagine if anyone could just cut the corners the way they wanted. There wouldn't be much point in having a track at all. That's why track limits are in place. Now, if you remember the previous episodes, I always told you to use as much of the track as possible. So, how far can you go? Almost all tracks have white lines indicating the track edges, and in most cases, a driver will be considered to have crossed the track limits when 4 tires are beyond these white lines of the track. As long as 1 tire of your car is within those limits, you should be golden. But since ripple strips and curbstones often extend these limits, it's tempting to go very wide. Additionally, sometimes leniency is allowed in specific corners depending on the track. So make sure you practice those track limits as to precisely know which boundaries to keep in mind. Drivers should make every effort to stay within the track limits at all times, but mistakes do happen. If you're far off track, make sure to always watch out for incoming traffic, as rejoining the track in an unsafe manner is probably one of the worst offenses a driver can do. So don't be ashamed to stop the car for a second just to make sure you have enough time to check for incoming traffic. Apart from crashing the car, the penalties you get from cutting the track is quite dependent on the game you play. In iRacing, you simply have to yield the time you gained. Meanwhile, in ACC you'll get 3 strikes before being sent for a drive-through penalty. The original Assetto Corsa has an interesting concept as well. You will be given the choice to either slow down to a certain speed, or you can let go of the accelerator for 10 seconds. Other racing sims make use of one of these choices or combine some of these together. Overtaking rules, whether it be for attacking or defending drivers, are the most vague rules in racing. Even in professional racing, it's not rare to see different parties argue about the legality of a move. My take on it after years of sim racing experience: don't be a dick about it. More seriously though, I think the rules the SCCA uses are quite interesting and give you a great idea of how to handle driving next to other cars on track. Rule A. Drivers are responsible to avoid any physical contact between cars on the racetrack. Racing is a non-contact sport, and while some rubbing might be happening, try to avoid it, as this can easily unbalance your competitor's car, and if netcode gets involved, a small tap can quickly turn into a full-on punt. Try explaining that wasn't your fault after the incident. B. Each driver has the right to racing room, which is defined as sufficient space on the marked racing surface, so that under normal racing conditions, a driver can maintain control over their car in close quarters. If you find yourself alongside a competitor, adapt your speed to the challenge. This is especially true in corners, where you physically can't go as quick side by side as you would going alone through the corner. C. Drivers must respect the right of other competitors to racing room. Abrupt changes in directions that impede or affect the path of another car attempting to overtake or pass may be interpreted as an effort to deprive a fellow competitor of the right to racing room. Try to avoid changing directions in braking zones and make sure when another car is side by side with you, you give them the room they deserve. When another car is far enough alongside you that their front wheels are about halfway next to your car, you are not allowed to bully them into a change of direction anymore. So no shutting the door aggressively. And finally, D. The overtaking driver is responsible for the decision to pass another car and to accomplish it safely. The overtaken driver is responsible to be aware that he is being passed and not to impede or block the overtaking car. A driver who does not use his rear view mirror or who appears to be blocking another car attempting to pass may be black flagged and or penalized. This rule is especially important in multi-class racing. If you're in a top class, make sure not to impede slower classes in their racing and use your power advantage to overtake in safer spots for both cars. Alternatively, if you are in the slower car class, be aware of what happens in your rear view mirror. Stick to your racing line and make sure your intentions are clear. Lifting the accelerator slightly on the straights can also make both parties lose a lot less time. Furthermore, it's widely accepted that a defending driver is allowed one defensive move per straight. This means that the driver can go to the inside of the corner to defend that line, but can then go back to the normal racing line when he needs to. This means that the defending driver is allowed 2 changes of direction and no more. These movements can also not be done in a way to impede the overtaking driver of a racing room as defined earlier. Whether a driver is defending or overtaking, one of the most important aspects of overtaking and defending is to keep control over your vehicle, no matter the maneuver that is attempted. Remember that when you're going side by side into a corner, you'll have to adapt your speed to give enough room to your fellow competitor. Make sure to go practice all the sim racing rules offline, try and get some penalties, try and do some overtakes, see if they are legal or not. And then next week we'll take a look at overtaking strategies to make you the smartest sim racer out there. Make sure to subscribe to the channel not to miss any of the sim racing guides. There's one coming every Tuesday of the week. All of the sources used in this video will be down in the description down below. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you space racers in the next one. Goodbye.